It was an ordinary day when I stumbled upon a shocking truth about my fiancée, Maya. After returning home from a long work trip, I was filled with excitement and eagerness to finalize the plans for our upcoming wedding. However, as I checked our savings account, I noticed something was decidedly off. The balance was suspiciously low, and a sense of unease washed over me. Initially, I attributed it to a potential banking error, or perhaps an automatic withdrawal I had overlooked. But as I scrutinized the account details more closely, the reality hit me like a ton of bricks. A staggering charge of $8,700 had been withdrawn for a luxury resort in the Bahamas, a resort that Maya had clearly visited with her ex, Kyle. My heart sank as I processed the implications of this revelation. The money that was earmarked for our wedding had been spent on a getaway with someone who had once been a significant part of her life. Just as I was grappling with this betrayal, Maya walked in, completely oblivious to the emotional storm brewing inside of me. When I confronted her, holding up my phone to show her the transaction, I expected some semblance of remorse or an explanation. Instead, she shrugged it off nonchalantly, casually stating that she needed closure with Kyle. Her flippant attitude infuriated me further. It was as though she viewed me as nothing more than a source of financial support, and her dismissal of my feelings ignited a deep-seated anger within me. In that moment, everything I had experienced with Maya throughout our relationship suddenly clicked into place. All the gaslighting and manipulation I had endured felt like pieces of a puzzle coming together. The realization that she had spent our future together on her past was devastating. It was clear she believed she had emerged victorious from her chaotic relationship with Kyle, but I decided then and there that it was time for a reckoning. If she could dismantle my life so effortlessly, I would take my time dismantling hers, slowly and methodically, until she was left bewildered and unaware of what was happening. As I reflected on our relationship, I began to understand that Maya's history with Kyle was far more complicated than I had initially grasped. She had often described their past as a passionate yet toxic whirlwind, filled with love and chaos that ultimately led to their breakup. Despite her claims of having moved on, it became increasingly clear that she had merely found another way to manipulate me, just as she had with him. I had fallen for her charm, convinced that I was different from her previous partners. She had always presented herself as someone seeking stability, but in reality, she craved chaos and drama in her life. Maya was deeply superstitious, a trait I had initially found quirky and endearing. She believed in signs from the universe, often manifesting her desires and even consulting psychics for guidance. This aspect of her personality became my weapon in the psychological game I was about to play. If she was convinced that the universe was guiding her, I would cleverly turn that belief against her. I knew I had to remain under her radar, so I started by feigning an apology, pretending to understand her need for closure. I assured her that I still wanted to marry her, and she bought it completely, giving me the perfect opportunity to execute my plan. I began to plant seeds of doubt in her mind. One morning, I casually mentioned a strange dream I had, one that felt ominous, hinting that it might be a sign. The way her demeanor shifted told me she was already on edge, her mind racing as she grappled with her own superstitions. I could see the conflict within her, torn between dismissing my comment as mere triviality and her ingrained belief in signs from the universe. As days passed, I escalated my tactics, switching out images on her vision board with disturbing images of destruction and chaos, secretly relishing in her growing unease. I continued to manipulate her environment, flickering the lights in our apartment to create an unsettling atmosphere and replacing her positive energy playlist with eerie, unsettling music. I watched as anxiety mounted within her, a mix of confusion and fear as she began to question her own reality. She was becoming increasingly paranoid, and I could see her spiraling. The final straw came when I sent her a cryptic message, alluding to an ominous event waiting to unfold. Maya's paranoia reached a peak, leaving her restless and jumpy. She became fixated on her phone, constantly checking for messages that might provide her with some comfort or reassurance. One night, I pretended to wake her from a nightmare, claiming she had been screaming about someone watching her. The terror etched on her face was a reflection of the chaos I had orchestrated. In that moment, I saw the shift. She truly believed that something sinister was at play, not just with the universe, but within herself. The culmination of my plan unfolded during the weekend. She went away with friends. While she was gone, I took decisive action. I emptied our joint accounts, canceled all utilities, and changed the locks on our apartment. When she returned, she was met with an empty shell of what was once our life together. The shock of losing everything she held dear, her home, her money, and her sense of security, was amplified by the cryptic message I had sent her just before her arrival. As she stood outside, banging on the locked door and begging for answers, I watched from a distance, sipping my coffee and relishing in her despair. The woman who had manipulated me for so long was now unraveling, and I wasn't there to save her. I allowed the reality of her situation to sink in, and when I woke up the next day to a barrage of missed calls and desperate messages from her, I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. Maya had always believed in karma, but she never expected it to come from me. I had turned the tables, using her own beliefs against her to orchestrate her downfall. In the end, I blocked her on every platform, leaving her to grapple with the consequences of her actions alone. The universe had spoken, and this time it was not in her favor.